Sam?
Yeah, well, I just want to say real quickly, this is Corbin Geiser with his Q-200 on this great morning this morning. And I guess we're going to have to say is take it away, Corbin.
All right, yeah, sounds good. It's cold here in Texas, and we're wimps in the cold. So if I've got a little nose that's red and you see puffs of my breath, that's why. But yeah, I'm Corbin Geiser, new to the Quickie Q-200 family, and quite a few of you guys have helped me out a lot, and I appreciate it. But I'm down here in McKinney, Texas, and I guess it's almost been exactly 2 years since I brought or bought it and brought it home from Bakersfield, California. So a lot of you guys know this plane, or you know a little bit something about it, because I think a few of you know Mark Summers. So Mark Summers was the original builder, and I think he put 600 hours on the airframe at least. And there were two different engines, but the O200's been in it most of the time. So I think of the 600 hours or so that Mark flew it, at least 560 of those hours were with this same engine. And then from there, as Mark moved on to bigger and better things, and you guys probably know more details about that, the plane ended up in a Young Eagles program in Missouri, I believe it was. And it basically was just sitting indoors, and they were allowing kids to learn, just fundamentals of flight just by sitting in it and, touching the plane. And I guess word got out, and the Skibbies, Jason and Martin Skibby in Bakersfield, went over there, made a deal, didn't leave them empty-handed. They kind of built them a cockpit and wings out of plywood, and they trailered home the Quickie. And Jason Skibby made some modifications. He planned on keeping this plane and racing it in the Reno air races, which he would have been doing by now. And so he modified the tail a little bit. He put the fuel injection on, and we'll get to all that. And then he found a long EZ and decided to switch his focus and efforts over to preparing or building a long EZ, which he's still working on today. So he posted this one about 2 years ago on Barnstormers, and I just happened to find it and flew out there, checked it out, did all the kind of pre-buy type stuff, and then arranged to ferry it home with a good tailwheel instructor that I know. So that's a little bit about that. I probably should spend a couple of minutes on how did I even get interested in, how did I find out about quickies, and how did I switch from, certified airplanes to experimental? Because I only have about 900 total hours, but it's always been in the typical aircraft. I owned a Turbo 210 for many years. I had a Blanca Super Viking for many years. I primarily, when I'm not traveling with the family in the Turbo 210, I'm really just primarily using the airplane to commute to work. I live in Dallas, but I work in Northwest Arkansas. And so, that's the primary reason. So that gets very expensive in a certified traditional airplane, as you guys would know. And so I started looking at just cheaper alternatives to still get to work in an efficient manner, but a little bit cheaper. Oh, yep, a little closer. Is that what you're saying, Sam? And I had gone to, oh, steady. Yep, it's cold. I had gone to Oshkosh one year and came across a long EZ. I had never really seen one in person. Talked to that gentleman for quite a while, learned a lot, went back, did my own research. My daughter likes to fly with me a lot, and so I was not too keen on tandem, seat front back. I like dual side-by-side seating. And so that's kind of how I stumbled upon the Quickie, because, there's not too many experimentals out there that are fast, fun, and have dual seats. So kind of looked into it that way. And then, like I said, saw the posting on Barnstormers, and the rest was history. So I've got it down here in McKinney. And let's see, I only have about 55 hours flying this plane. So it has close to 700 hours on it now, or 670 hours on it total, but only about 55 are mine. So I'm still very new to learning this plane. Everything about it I absolutely love. As Sam has pointed out, I've been tinkering with it and upgrading, and I've got plans to do a lot more. So I think that might be pretty good for an introduction. And then let me kind of show you the plane. Let me switch it around, and we'll talk about what's under the cow. So obviously, you know, standard protocol, I've got the lower cowling off. And I do have the VG. So this is the GU canard. But I know Jim was pretty strong in telling me the VGs need to stay on the GU canard, and you guys know all about that. Oh, look, I've got a question here. Sam, do you want me to do these questions now, or do you want me to save these for later?
Whenever you like.
Okay, I'll go ahead. The ferry flight, I should include a little bit more detail about that. So when we left Bakersfield and headed, we actually took it to Northwest Arkansas. We didn't come straight to Texas, and we did at least the first two legs. I can't remember about the third leg, with two of us in there, and I'm a solid 200 pounds. My tail instructor that was in the left seat, he's probably 150. So whatever that adds up to. So we weren't real heavy. We could take on full fuel. We were doing the first two legs at 11,500 feet. We were staying, you know, obviously VFR, and we were, if I remember correctly, I think our true airspeed was 163 knots at 11,500, running, you know, rich. And I think that fuel burn, the best economy cruise fuel burn that we got was on the third leg when we pulled it back and leaned it out. And I want to say we got it down to like 4.7 gallons per hour. I don't remember our true airspeed. It didn't drop a lot. So the speed seems pretty good on this one, from what I understand. Pretty impressive. The first year of flight was the other question that popped up. I honestly, I don't remember. I'd have to go look in the logs. For some reason, I want to say 1981, but I just don't know. I'm not sure on that. All right, so let me grab the top cowling without breaking anything. Bear with me. So we've probably got three things to kind of show you here. Oh, by the way, this is a Stagger Easy. Some of you guys know that's the only one that, it's not mine. That's the only one that exists. There's only one Stagger Easy. All right, so we'll start with maybe the simplest thing that I think a lot of you guys are aware of is the exhaust. So originally it had the crossover exhaust. So you had the two over here would cross over, and they would cross over right here. And the reason that became problematic was when I went to put on the electronic ignition, this magnet plate wouldn't fit. The exhaust was in the way. So that was probably our first delay in the electronic ignition install the last few months, because I had to stop, take off the exhaust, and then have custom exhaust made. And so I just did two stacks, you know, 2 into 1 on each side. They both pretty much look just like this. I coated the inside and outside, and you know, I think they look pretty good. The other side is the same, although I did have a little bit of oil drip already kind of mess up the look and feel. But there's the new exhaust, pretty good looking exhaust. I guess before we get to the electronic ignition, a lot of people are probably just sitting here staring at the fuel injection. So it is a fuel injected O200A. This is the Airflow Performance fuel injection. Pretty good system. It does run quite rich. So I am having a little bit of issues really trying to figure out, you know, where I want that mixture setting. I think that's part of my problem actually with getting the carbon build up. It's just running too rich, and I'm having to lean just way too much. And so it's kind of causing issues for me, a lot of adjustments. You know, if I lean it too much, obviously the engine's going to die on final, you know, when I pull the power. And in fact, I really had a lot of trouble even getting it to idle happy down below 500 RPM. So I know I don't need to be that low, but right now I've got it back up around 640, 650 RPM, and it's still pretty rich. So I still have some adjusting to do, but I'm going to leave it like it is now, get it flying. But it's a good system. Here's the spider up top. I think that's pretty standard for fuel injection. So just kind of giving you the look.
So Corbin, just to clarify, so you have a fuel pump system that supplies pressure and it brings it into the
yes.
into the airflow performance, and then you've got
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I can walk through the fuel system. It's part of it, or most of it's probably similar to you guys. But yeah, let me walk through. So I do have the the 15-gallon main, a 5-gallon header in the middle, and so I've got obviously the transfer pump moving it from the main to the header, and then I've got 2 electric fuel pumps that move it from the header into the injection system to the engine. So just a little bit of redundancy on the 2 engine fuel pumps there, our fuel pumps, the electric fuel pumps there. Let's see. So
just
I think
a little bit on that mixture.
about...
I just want to let you know that if you're having a hard time finding your happy place for the mixture, you can install an O2 sensor, an automatic automotive O2 sensor, and it'll just give you a readout, so you know what your stoichiometric readout is. So we can talk about that later.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah. I'll definitely want to look into that. Okay. Let's see. So that's the fuel injection system, and then I guess we can get back to the electronic ignition that basically just finished up installing. Took a while. I was using an avionics buddy of mine to help me out as I got a little bit busy, and he could only his time was limited. So it was a very slow project to get completed. It's all completed now. So like I was saying with the exhaust issue, so here's the magnet plate. While we're still down here, I'll show you. There's the lower magnet sensor. Hopefully the sun's not blinding you too much there. So you've got the lower magnet sensor here. We'll move up top, and you've got the upper magnet sensor here. And I'll get back to, this is another one of the, oh, and by the way, this is the Lightspeed dual electronic ignition system from Klaus. So, but I'll get back to this. This was another problem area for us during the install. You can see the coil sensors here. So you've got the 2, all 4 are mounted right on the engine case. So you got the 2 here, you got the 2 back here. I know a lot of guys put them back on the firewall. We had just enough room here, so I really do like this setup. I've got them labeled, just so you definitely put the boots back where they need to go. But I'm really happy with it. And then the plasma boxes, or the ignition boxes, I should say, we'll try to get a look at them underneath here in a minute. But basically, one is right here, above where your knees would be, and the other one's right here. So one would be for the lower, one would be for the upper, and same here. These would either be for the lower or the upper, and I can't remember which is which. Let's
Corbin,
see.
I noticed
Going back to this.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead.
I noticed your oil tank. You got kind of a modified oil tank. Oil sump. Can you just talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's good to talk about, because to be honest with you, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the norm is on that. So I didn't actually know that was different or modified, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it looks like he cut it down to accommodate streamlining underneath the cowl, and so it's no longer a 6-quart tank. It's something less than 6. It appears
it's 4. Yeah, it is a 4.
Yeah. All right, that's it.
And you're right. Yeah, he must have kind of kept it, no lower than the fuel injection system, basically. Yeah, that's good to know. All right, so the other problem area on the ignition system, just as an FYI, is a really simple problem, but it had us stumped for a long time. Let me switch, see if I can get a little bit more light on it. So this top sensor, well, you won't be able to see what I'm referring to too well, but basically there's, it has to be a certain, amount of spacing in between the magnet plate and the magnet sensor, obviously. I mean, it's a pretty tight window. It's not too bad, but it's really the alignment. So there's a couple of markings that are a little bit difficult to see on here. And in the install manual from Klaus, the wording could be, I guess there's room for improvement. The wording makes it sound like you basically line up these 2 marks and you're good to go. And that it's just simply not the case. What you really have to do is you have to you have to pay attention to where the very small magnets are. That little round dot is the magnet. You really have to pay attention to where those are, and then you line that up where it needs to be on the sensor itself. And once we figured that out, and that's fairly easy to test, as you can just rock the prop back and forth and get a spark. Once we figured that if we focused on the magnet and not the markings, it all went flawlessly, and we had just immediate success with the ignition system. So let's see, what else is there to say? Probably not much. You've already noticed the plenum design that I have on the upper cylinders. We could probably, Sam, you correct me, but if there's nothing else here, I could probably move inside.
Yeah, do that. We've got about 10 minutes left on this portion here.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so let's do that. Let me move inside. Hopefully we'll have enough light. I do have Jim and I were talking not too long ago about seats and upholstery. I think, Jim, you recently got your seats redone as well. So you can see my pretty leather seats there. I love them. And so here's the panel. I mean, I don't need to say much. You guys know what all these guys are. But if you see something or have a question about anything, obviously pop it up there. Here's the two electric fuel pump, the switches for the two electric fuel pumps that I was talking about earlier. The transfer pump and avionics, what there are of avionics, are all over here on the right side. I will share that. Oh yeah, perfect. So technically, yeah, I have an autopilot. It's not inside the airplane yet. It's actually at home on my desk. So what I've done is now that the electronic ignition is finished, I need to go fly. So I have not had a chance to fly it since the ignition system was completed. So once I have a chance to kind of fly it, make sure there's no bugs related to the ignition install, the next thing I'm going to do is basically it's going to be an entirely new panel. So I bought all the Garmin products. I'm going to put in the smaller Garmin G3X display. I have the two Garmin servos for the autopilot. I did not buy the autopilot panel yet, or control interface. I'm actually just going to control the autopilot through the G3X display, and I'm going to see how well that works for me. And I'm not used to not having physical buttons, but that's what I'm going to do. And then I did also buy the Garmin remote comm, so I won't have a radio any longer. I did not splurge for the Garmin transponder because, well, it's just simply way too much money, and it has ADS-B in it, but I already have ADS-B. So I will still have this transponder, but basically everything else, except for a few switches, will be gone. I won't even have circuit breakers. I bought if you're familiar with the vertical power electronic circuit breaker system,
Yeah.
I'm going to have all the circuit breakers controlled through the G3X as well. Now technically you could get a little bit crazy, and you could actually control all of the switches through the G3X display and the vertical power system as well. In other words, technically I wouldn't need a transfer pump switch, an avionics switch, RPM. I wouldn't need anything. Now, I think that's a real bad idea. So I will keep switches. It'll also have push button start. So I'll have the push button start, and I think that's about it. So yeah, it'll have autopilot soon. Hopefully we'll get started on that by March is what I'm planning. And that install will actually go a lot faster. I'm going to use the same guy that did the electronic ignition, but it's going to go a lot faster because I'm going to move this plane. I have another hangar over at Denton, and I'm going to move the plane over there. And he actually works at an avionics shop over there. So he's going to be able to come over to my hangar, every day after work. Yeah. Let's look down below. Let me grab a flashlight. Sam was asking about the rudder pedals. It should be enough light. There you go. Hopefully you guys can see that pretty well. So pretty standard there, I think. And then on the right side, same setup but no brakes, or similar setup, I should say. So the rudder cables just come across to the pilot side, to the left there, and then come on back to the rear of the plane. with this flashlight, there's the ignition box for the light speed dual ignition. And then there's one, you know, on the passenger side. While we're down here, I'll just kind of pan over so you can see. And then what I didn't think about doing was taking off the baggage area. So bear with me while I take off my covers for the baggage area, and I'll show you the tail or the inside. Let me show you what I'm doing. I've had these move on me. These are just little carbon inserts that Skibby built, Jason Skibby. And I've actually had these shift on me in flight. And then all of a sudden I sink back into the baggage compartment. So until I come up with a better design, I've simply been reinforcing it with duct tape, pure experimental style.
Corbin, with mine,
all right.
Just real simple. I just drilled a hole at the upper corners and then stuck in a bolt with no nut on the back end of it, and it just holds it in place there and keeps it from dropping down.
Oh, you know what? I love the simple things like that. You know what? I might do that today, Sam. I might do that today. All right, let's see here. So there we go. So you can see the aux pump there. You've got on the other side is the you know, the filter, I think, is the only really thing over there. And then right here, this is you guys will make fun of me. That's actually my GPS module, just Velcroed to the bottom for now until we do the avionics. And then what you'll really make fun of me for is that's the UAvionics Echo ADS-B 2 modules. So it works really well. And again, Velcroed to the side. I've actually got about 20 hours of flying with it like that. And I'm kind of surprised they haven't fallen off, but it's still working. Let's see.
There's some sort of a trim you have there. I saw, I have some old pictures of your aircraft when Mark Summers owned it. Is that roll trim that goes back to your aileron controls?
Yeah, so right here's the roll trim. You're right.
Oh, that's nice.
And then I have the elevator trim here in the middle there. But yeah, this is, obviously this is crucial. And you can see it a little bit. Let me get the elevators. So, all right. So the elevator on the right side is, it's way over there, but so that's flush. And, Skibby has it where this one is down a little bit, a degree or two. I don't know what that is. Obviously that would give it more lift on this wing. So this wing would come up. I still roll to the left. So I still believe I need to adjust this down another half turn, which I guess would be the adjustment here, right? So I do still need to do that because, as nice as this roll trim is that we're talking about, I'm constantly giving it right trim to keep it level, so that I'm not just, forcing the stick over in flight. So that's another thing that I really need to dial in and figure out pretty soon, actually. That's a pretty important one, because what I don't want to do is not get around to that and then overwork the autopilot servos, once I get those installed. And then I'll forget that it's, got that issue because the servos are taking care of it. But anyway, let's see, what else, Sam? Am I missing anything major here? Or we're probably out of time.
Well, we've got 9 minutes left, so.
Oh, still 9. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. I can't think of anything obvious. Well, let me show you the tail. It may not be real obvious in the quality of video that we have here, but I will show you what Jason modified on the tail. I think, by the way, this is a lot of you guys have referred to this as the RV lure. I think that was Mark Summers' kind of signature that a lot of people recognize this plane because of that RV lure. So what Jason did, and this will be difficult, but if you focus on the ridge of the tail, and if you see it's off-centered from the paint marking, right? So it's a little bit to the left. If you look at the the edges of the gray paint.
Huh.
And that's what Jason was really dialing in, I guess. So he would take it out flying, and then he would come back and I guess mock this up, and he ended up just kind of keep moving this ridge over to the left, over to the left, to get it just where he wanted it for whatever reasons, and then slap the paint on there and called it a day. But that's one interesting thing, that it's by design, and it's not an accident. It's not the paint off centered. It's actually in the design to be a little bit off centered there. So not sure exactly what he was doing that for, but at least I believed him. It was on purpose.
Probably has something to do with the P factor. But
Yeah, could be. And he also, it is an O200, right? And a lot of us are running the O200s. And he says with the fuel injection and everything, he thinks it's putting out about 120 horsepower. I've got no proof of that, but yeah, I mean,
does. Yeah.
Yeah. So percentage wise, I mean, if he's accurate, then yeah, he could have had a little bit more P factor going on than, I don't know. But he definitely noticed a change when he put the fuel injection system in. So I guess that's where he started modifying it.
A couple of comments here. Jerry mentioned that he did that similar thing for P factor and it worked well for him. Bruce Crane was asking about the aileron trim. Maybe it needs a break so it doesn't move on its own. And Jay is asking about the compression on your pistons.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so we'll start on the trim. It does have, I can't say it works really well, but it does have this little locking nut. It still does move. I have it loose right now. But yeah, in flight, even though when I go to the right and I lock this guy down, it'll still creep back on me a little bit. So I'm not sure how to improve that, but yeah, it's just not strong enough to lock it in place. Or I need to lose 30 pounds. Maybe that's what it is. The compression, I actually have the last compressions still written on here, so you can see it. Actually, the last one, well, maybe you can't see it real well, but the number 2, this is the number 2, 77, 75. They're all right around that range.
No, we were asking we were asking if you had standard pistons or a high compression.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, just standard.
Okay.
Yep, just standard.
And we're happy to see your compression numbers are where they should be.
Yeah, I was all excited. Nobody's asked me that in a long time. So, but actually, one of my favorite little modification. Well, it's not really a modification, but this little guy holds up the canopy. Right, we can all relate to that.
Could you show how it's hinged?
Yeah, well, very very poorly on this, but
no, I mean the canopy.
Canopy. Yeah, the canopy is quite stout. Very very strong hinge system. Let me see if we can see it from below as well. Maybe. Maybe not. Yeah, it's very very sturdy hinge system. And then you've probably noticed too the locking mechanism. Quite stout, very strong. On both sides there.
Corbin, we've got about 4 minutes left on this session, and then everybody will log off and then come back in for the questions and answers. But could you talk a little bit about how you learned to fly this? Because you have a lot of time. You have a lot of time in a Cessna 210, I know.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, in fact, let's see. Probably going to get situated so I'm not blinded by the sun. I would say, of my 900 or so hours, easily 475 of those are flying that turbo 210. So, as you guys probably know, those things fly themselves, right? And I do a lot of Colorado flying back in those days, and then a lot of back and forth to work. So yeah, the Quickie was very different for me, and I didn't have a whole lot of tail wheel time. I would play around in Huskies and a Cub every once in a while when I'm up at work, but I didn't have a lot of tail wheel time, probably less than 30 hours total. So what I did is I took my tail wheel instructor. His name's Dominic. He's just a great guy. He can fly anything. He can look at it, study it, fly it. And so he's the one that went out to Bakersfield with me. Once we brought it back, what we didn't really know how to transition me into this plane. We just had to make it up as we went. And we had to get around insurance too. So what we did is, I started out in the right seat, so I didn't have controls, didn't have brakes, and frankly, the rudders on the right side are not quite as effective as the left. Now, maybe it's because on the left you may be using a little bit of brake and not realizing it, and they feel a little bit more effective. But so what we did is basically we started off doing high speed taxis. We went out to Harrison, Arkansas, where there's a runway just about as big as here at McKinney, and obviously he would work the controls. I would just try to keep center line, and we would go up and down the runway, keeping it under 50 miles per hour, and turn around and do it again until the cylinder head temperatures couldn't take any more, and then we'd fly it back to Bentonville. So we did that probably, I don't know, a total of a couple of hours over 2 or 3 days total. And then what we did is, let's see, I would take the stick. So I would keep the rudder pedals, and I took the stick. No, actually, I'm sorry. He took back the rudder, and I just introduced the stick. So now I only have the stick from the right seat. He had power controls, obviously, and I would do the takeoff, and stay in the pattern. So I do the crosswind, the downwind, the base turn, and then he would come in and he would actually do the landing. So we did that quite a few times just so I could just ingrain the 2 minutes, the sight picture into my brain. And then from there, we just kind of progressed. I took back the rudder pedals. So then I had the rudders and the stick. And we would do the same thing, just in the pattern at Harrison, large runway, 150 feet wide, 7,000 feet long. And then I think after I could keep center line fairly well, that's when we moved me over to the left seat. And then I had it all. So basically at that point, he was just telling me, don't flare yet. Because again, coming from the 210, basically a truck, I would just come in and start flaring. And you guys know better than anybody, you don't flare these things. You barely even round out. So I probably did 20-25 landings. And then my first flight was bringing it home to McKinney. My first solo flight was bringing it home to McKinney, which is still today my best landing to date. So, and then one minute left, so I'll try to get to the rest of it. So once I got it home to McKinney, I would go out and fly just about every morning and get a landing or two in, and then head home, do some work, come back out at lunch, fly it again, get another landing. And then probably when we join back, I'll probably run out of time if I continue the story now. I'll tell you about the bad landing that I have that Jim knows about very well, and we'll pick up from there and then handle the question. Too long. So yeah, about the time I was finally back in the plane, flying it consistently, getting some good landings in, really starting to dial them in, starting to play with speed and all that. I made a crucial I made a bunch of mistakes. Jim's probably counting up to 20 mistakes that I've made, but it was all self-induced mistakes. And what I did basically, without sharing too much of the details, it'll take an hour, is coming back around on final, speed was good. And I have been in the habit of putting the reflexor in probably a little bit too early. That was ingrained in me, just not to forget to put the reflexor back. And so just to get it out of sight, out of mind. So that was probably the start of my issue. Is I already had that pitch up kind of attitude and trimmed for airspeed, but I'm probably coming in with less of a visual that I should have. So I came in and should be touching down, and it's just not. And I couldn't figure it out. I had a plane landing behind me that was told to go around, and so I knew I probably shouldn't go around because I didn't know where they were, and so I just needed to set it on the ground here at McKinney. I've got 7,000 feet, so I knew it was okay there. And so what I did is, probably a little bit consciously and mostly not, is I just kept gently bringing the stick back. I just wanted that tail to get down. You're right. I just wanted that tail wheel to get down, and and then shove the mains down. And I just was pulling further and further back without realizing it. And I think I was a little bit higher above the runway than I realized too, a few feet versus, a couple of feet or something. And so basically I just started getting in this pitch up attitude without realizing it. And here's why I didn't realize it is I've got the Koger sunshades, and that day, our sunshade, I had it all the way forward. So, we already don't have, good visibility on these planes, right? And then here I am kind of blinding myself and minimizing it even further. And so I think that cut out a lot of my visual cues from the outside world, that I was, at a pitch up angle. And so eventually, I'd love to know how slow I got to going in flight, but eventually it came down very gently, to be honest with you. It just kind of popped down, and then it was more cocked to the left. And so all of a sudden, I'm almost at a 45-degree angle to the center line, heading off the runway to the left. So I'm on center line roughly, and all I see is grass coming and a big runway light, edge light. And so I'm just tapping that right rudder. I didn't want to overcorrect and create more problems. So I'm just tapping the right rudder, just wanting to get straight on the left side of the runway. It did nothing, absolutely nothing. So I know I'm going into the grass, and so I just kept the stick back to keep that tail, make sure I could keep it down as much as I could, so I didn't get a prop strike. I go off into the grass, a little bit of a downhill, and come to a stop. And Tower and I talk, and I'm just kind of like, I'm going to shut it down, Tower. And they're like, all right, we got the trucks on the way. And that really didn't register with me, that they were so eager to get the trucks on the way. But I realized, man, the engine's sitting here, it's just fine. No prop strike. I'm going to give it a little bit of juice and see if I can just taxi out of the grass. Probably not the best idea, but so I called back to Tower. I said, call off the trucks. If okay with you, I'm going to taxi it back up to the runway. I think everything's fine. They're like, yeah, if you can do that, go for it. And I did. So I taxied right across the runway. I was exactly halfway down the runway. So I was at 3,500 feet down the runway. Taxied it back to the hangar, and everything's been fine. But it was enough to shake me up. And that's what started the conversation of, I discovered probably the thing that did it was I didn't have all the power out. I'm convinced. I thought I had all the power out. I either had it out, but when it finally landed, I must have jolted a little bit of power in, and that's why I was flying off the runway towards the grass, and the tail wheel was probably off the ground, and that's why I wasn't able to tap and get it, anyway. So that's the little story of the bad landing that I had.
You had the VGs on there, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, had the VGs on.
Yeah, those will keep you flying longer.
It seemed like I was flying really slowly for a while. It really did. So and then we started the electronic ignition installed to get the RPMs down and and all that kind of stuff. So haven't landed it since that landing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I saw you've got a glass filter on the fuel line there underneath. What's that? Where does that go?
Oh, no, where's
glass
this?
Filter?
All glass filter?
Yeah, it's up underneath when you were showing the ignitions. I thought I saw one of those small glass in there.
Let's see. In here? Is it?
Yeah, the fuel filter there.
Okay, so if it's where I have the flashlight, that's actually the overflow from the header back to the main.
I thought I saw a clear fuel filter somewhere. Maybe I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of one.
Oh, you did. I saw it there too earlier. It's a little bit higher there, Corbin, and go just a little bit higher.
A little bit higher. Okay, right there.
Right there.
So beware of that filter and be careful with that, because it will look like it's clear and it can be totally plugged. So I would highly recommend on a regular basis you either change that out or make sure about it, because that will cause you grief.
Oh, good information. Okay, excellent.
And actually, I think that kind of fuel filter has kind of been discouraged from use because it can clog up like that, but it can leak also. It's kind of a screwy filter. It's not really aircraft grade, but anyway. Okay.
Oh, that's good. I can't say I've ever noticed that, to be honest with you.
Oh, at a minimum, you should change that out once a year. But
exactly.
What's the element?
I don't know if you can hear me, you guys, but I still have that original filter in there.
Do you?
Okay.
I use it to just check to see that my seat tank, that's the filter that filters the fuel from the seat tank to the header tank, and that's my indication when I have to get fuel. I don't have an accurate gauge. I go by the time, and when I see bubbles in that, I shut my fuel pump off, and I've still got. But it's not mounted up as high as yours is, Corbin.
Okay.
Hey,
yeah,
Dave,
I'll definitely look into that.
Dave, I've got one as well. I'm not saying they're bad. What I'm saying is you got to pay attention.
Yeah.
Because I've had mine plug up. I've checked mine over the years, and twice I've had mine where I thought it was clear, and I blew through it, and it literally had back pressure on it. And when I cleaned it or replaced it, it was obvious.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it looked like it had nothing in it.
I've got one too, but it's in a box in the basement.
That's right. You can replace that with a Fram. I put a Fram on mine so that Charlie got me onto it. One Skydog. He got me onto it a long time ago. So
Okay.
I have Fram now.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I can actually see fuel overflowing. My overflow goes back, and I can actually see the fuel running down that, which is that's part of my that's part of my scan when I'm looking at all my stuff and checking it to see.
Me too.
I can look
I
and
just
see
have
the
one-
fuel is
I just
actually
have-
running back down into the main tank. So.
I do the same thing, Dave. I just have one though, but mine is from the header to down to the Marvel Shebler, and I watch the same thing. I can see it. So,
Yeah.
but I change that out probably every 40 or 50 hours. I pull it out and just look at it.
Yep.
Hey, Corbin, can you talk about with all your time in the 210, the differences in your experience, especially being new, the differences between as a pilot that you've liked and the challenge, both the positives and the negatives with this migration from the 210 to the Quickie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love the 210. I mean, it's just a phenomenal plane. And I wore it like the back of my hand. I stayed very current in that plane. I was probably doing 25, 30 hours a month in that plane. And then I moved on to a 206 and stuff too. But I guess what I've learned in flying this is that you really, it's hard to get complacent in something like this. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but comparing it to the 210, I realize, they fly themselves, like I said earlier. And so this is challenging. This kind of excites me and brings back the passion of flying because it's something to respect and learn. And then, that continues on with the maintenance and everything that I get to tinker with. I'm learning a lot. The 210, I just simply was flying it, and then I would hand it off to an A&P for mechanic needs, and I wasn't learning anything, right? And so I became very complacent, comfortable, and all that, which can also get dangerous. So I have to. There are times where, honestly, I wish I had another plane in addition to this one, so that I could just get out with my daughter again and fly, and just not have to worry about anything. I'm not going to put her in this for a long time because I'm still learning it. But that's the one thing I do miss is just being able to jump in a 182, a 206, a 210, head to Colorado, or just go fly around and hit a grass strip or two. I do miss that, but overall, this is making me a better pilot. It's increasing my knowledge. It's keeping my mind active. The other thing I do miss is I was very current instrument flying. I got a lot of actual time, and now I'm not. Right, I'm not current. I'm not getting 20, 30 hours a year in solid clouds for 2 hours at a time.
So you don't have the 210 anymore?
No, and so here's the quick story on that. I kind of did a favor to somebody. Well, so there were 4 of us in that plane. I had 3 partners, all great guys. One of them was an A&P, another one was a CFII, and then the other guy was a guy just like me, except the 3 of them maybe flew the plane a couple or 3 times a year, and then I flew it every week. Great guys. Well, one of them was offered early retirement from Capital One here in Dallas. So he moved up to Alaska and started flying for Raven Air, I think it is. So he retired, but wanted to keep flying and get paid for it. So he was flying up in beautiful Alaska. So he moved, and he had been gone for a year and a half, and just, we didn't sell his share. He put a posting out there, but it's pretty hard to find a partner in a town that can fly that plane that wants a quarter share. So, his share did not sell for a long time. And then the CFII, he decided to fully move to Colorado. He had a house in Pagosa Springs, and he said, "That's it, I'm out." So he had moved 6 months ago and, was gone. And so it was me and this guy named John. And the quick story there is, as long as I've known John, he had never worked a day in his life. He was about my age. I'm 48. He was right there in with me at 47, 48. He would build apps, not gaming apps, but it was more like business enterprise kind of apps for mobile devices. And he had designed one or created one years ago before I met him, like 5-6 years ago. You would think it would be old technology at that point. His code, it sold, and he had partners in that whole program, but it sold for $550 million. And so I don't know how much he got, but he got enough to call me up one day and say, I just bought a $930,000 house in Colorado. I'm moving in 30 days. He bought a brand new Tesla. And I said, so you're really not calling me just to brag. You're calling to ask me if we can sell the plane. And he said, yeah. And so I agreed not to be, that guy. And so I agreed to go ahead and sell the entire plane, since that's easier than selling, individual shares. And so we sold that in February or March of this year. So I don't have it anymore. That plane's gone. But yeah, so the mounts. So I do have a YouTube channel, Corbin Aviation, and it really, no pun intended, but it really took off when I got this plane. So, before I got this plane, it was mostly the 210 flying, kind of boring stuff, to be honest with you. Stick up a camera, here's a flight. But people liked it. And then when I got this thing, I put out a video of, not a great video, but a video of us bringing it back from Bakersfield, the ferry flight. And I think it got to 100,000 views pretty quickly. And then just a lot of people wanted to see more and more about this plane. So I've got a few videos out there on it. But yeah, I do have a couple of different angles for the GoPro here. And then I'll usually stick.
Not to interrupt, right, but I've got those same kind of mounts, but I'm kind of nervous about sticking them on there and then putting a $500 camera on there.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation on that?
I just cross my fingers. Obviously on these planes, you can't do any of the more secure mounts, like where you drill into an existing screw plate or anything like that. I've only lost one camera with this kind of mount. It wasn't on this plane. It was actually on the 210. I guess my only suggestion would be don't put it on there and then, an hour later or less, stick a camera on there and go fly. Whenever I put a mount on, I leave it there for a couple of days just to make sure that it's, really solid on there. And then I replace them I don't have a specified time, but probably every 20 hours of flying roughly. I take it off, no matter how secure it is on there, I take it off and put a new one on. And then again, wait a couple of days before I actually, put a camera on there and use it. I will say though, it could be just in my mind, but there's no drag on these planes. And I think I can actually tell a difference when that camera is out there versus when it's not. It's bizarre.
I guarantee you can, because when you go as fast as you're going,
yeah,
every little, well, Sam can confirm this, but every little bit makes a difference.
Well, we were even joking, and earlier I was talking about my left roll tendency in this plane and how I need to make adjustments. We were joking one day of, why don't you just put the camera on the other wing instead of this one and create a little bit more drag over there and see if that fixes
I run
it.
my left elevator down about 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
And that's I still have a little bit of a left wing tendency if I'm not hooked up on the autopilot, but my Trio drives it just fine. It doesn't overload it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And the other thing I started thinking about too was, did I get so lazy flying the 210 so much that I wasn't always, and I use the autopilot in the 210 a lot too. And so my rudder, was I getting lazy with the right rudder? And so I thought, well, the next time I go up and I have that left roll tendency, I need to kick in a little bit of right rudder and see if that's part of my problem as well.
Anything big enough down there?
No, and I think that's not stroke my flow.
Well, Corbin, I have been flying my airplane probably just a little bit longer than yours.
Surface area.
And
think that's
And
pretty.
I can tell you that the stick and rudder tendencies
done.
I really notice that difference from a conventional airplane. That maybe some of the other guys that have thousands of hours in their quickies are very used to it, but yeah, it has a different feel to it.
We're gonna
It
try.
does. It really does. And I've been flying a Cherokee 6 a little bit lately, and even that's different than the 210 because it's a low wing, you're a little bit closer to the runway, and so that's my big issue is with these planes. I mean, you just have to fly them all the way to the runway, and I'm just not used to that.
Tail dragger.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I can testify that you have to do that in the tricycle gear too.
I'm sure of it. Yeah, these airplanes, as we discussed, you just think about flying them and they fly. And so what happens is newer guys come in and they just try to, power up on the controls and they just overpower them. But if you just think about it, it works.
Yeah. I just have to keep that nose down. I just keep coming in and thinking I need to flare, and then it plops, and then you have to recover from that. And
one of the guys on the group said that he thinks about landing in the tail dragger where he just thinks about putting his heels of his feet on the runway.
Yeah.
And he says that gives him the right perspective.
Back
Well,
when I was test flying my airplane, Dave Richardson sent me a long email. I think it was right after I got it out of the test phase and I was in phase 2. And Dave Richardson sent me a long email and he said, the biggest thing you got to remember is see the whole runway. Don't get your nose too high. See the whole runway. And that's what I tell myself. And I've messed up, trust me. But that's what I tell myself every landing. See the runway center line. See the runway center line.
yeah, it's funny you say that. So can you see these 2 dry erase markers on the canopy?
Uh-huh.
So I put those there, and I know to keep the horizon in between those 2 lines as my little heads up display reminder.
I like it.
But I think that one day,
that's a cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the one day I had the bad landing, I clearly forgot about those 2 little lines.
Yep. Hey, Sam, Corbin, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to alert you guys to something that just happened to me. And I had a mixture issue coming up Thursday, and I was trying to pull the mixture out. This started last week. I could only get it out about 1 inch, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. So I get back to Livermore and decaled it and everything and pushed the mixture in and out, and it was working. So went back and flew it again a couple of days ago, and it's the same thing. So what had happened was the tooth bolts that are studs that hold the spider up onto the bottom of the engine. And they're basically threaded nuts, and they have a cotter pin through them. The one in the rear had actually loosened up, backed off, and the entire thing rotated vertically downward until it actually interfered with the mixture control. And
wow.
I wasn't in any danger of issues because I was rich, but that was an interesting thing. I've never seen that happen. Sam, have you ever had any exposure to that?
I don't think so, but I haven't had a mixture control for a long time either.
Well, that's true. I forgot.
I don't have a carburetor.
Jim, I'm going to put that on
I forgot.
I'm going to put that on my 2,000 hour check.
Yeah, good idea. I was surprised because I'd never ever given that a second thought. It literally locked it up and it would not move forward or backward. But it's fixed now. It's ready to go.
Something that might be of some help is think of throttle as altitude and stick as airspeed when you're coming in for a landing. Does anybody think about that any? Has that helped you to arrest the descent?
Yeah, that's how I fly. Yeah, that's exactly how I think of it.
Because when you're coming in and you're losing a lot of altitude, the tendency is to pull back on the stick to keep that from, and that just sets you up for a nose high attitude. You don't want to overspeed either, but anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I was really happy after I had quite a few good landings where I was like, okay, now I just need to dial in the right airspeed, which to your point, it's also saying like the right pitch, because I'm just convinced these things, I can have it trimmed out, and then I'm just, adjusting power, and it's going to land itself for the most part. And so what my mind does to me is, oh, I'm in ground effect now, so let's flare, and hold it off and burn off energy and set it down gently, and that just keeps creeping into my mind from the 210 days. But I think I've thought about it enough over the last few months of while we've been installing this system, that I'm pretty sure as kind of nervous as I am about my next landing, I bet it's going to be one of my best.
Well, the biggest challenge for me in this airplane is keeping the air speeds where they're supposed to be. And I posted the other day on the email list the numbers that I shoot for. My goals are 110 miles an hour across the numbers, 95 on base, 90 on final, and then about 80 across the numbers, and touchdown about 75. But of course, at that point, you're not really looking. One time I was out, earlier this year, I went out and I did a bunch of touch and goes at a nearby airport, did 10 of them in a row. And every time the thing just blasts right through the pattern altitude and to keep that in control. It's really a good exercise, but it's interesting. My last landing wasn't any better than my first after 10. So anyway.
Well, I guess when you have perfection.
I found that I carry 90 on final, but I found that more and more I get it back to 90 on the downwind, because it's just more comfortable just to get it all trimmed up, ready to go on the downwind. And it changes a little bit when you're making your turns, but it just helps out to get in the mindset,
As far as
it's
nailing
funny
down
here.
those, as far as nailing down those airspeeds, different airspeed indicators are going to do different things. So if they're going to try to nail numbers down that you guys have just given, they might need to pay a little more attention outside once they come over the numbers. And for their aircraft, because you could be off 5 miles an hour on an airspeed indicator, maybe even 10. Probably not that much. Maybe you need to have the instrument recalibrated, but apples to apples, you have to be careful and work out your own little thing with how fast you come over the numbers. I come over the numbers probably 100 miles an hour whenever I touch down. It doesn't feel like it's that fast. So, and there's different places. I know if your pitot static tubes come loose, things will vary a lot with that too. It'll go to the inside the cockpit static. So just getting the feel for it, I guess. Anyway, I don't know if that's any help for anybody.
It's funny here at McKinney, the last time I was, kind of staying in the pattern, I wouldn't do a touch and go because again, getting to know the plane, I was worried I'd forget to get that reflexor back out. So I was always doing taxi back and then take off again. But it was funny because once they knew I was going to do more than a couple, if everybody was left pattern, so everybody's, turning left crosswind and coming around, I'm just so much faster, right? We are in these quickies. And so I was the only one that they would have me do a right turn out. And it was fun. I'm passing everybody in the downwind on the right side.
Isn't that fun?
It is. I loved it. I think Tyler kind of liked it too.
Wait till you fly it into Oshkosh and they say, okay, Dragonfly, follow the tri-pacer in front of you.
Anybody flying an angle of attack?
What's that?
Corbin,
Anybody? Go ahead, Jim.
Corbin, are you feeling for the runway with the tail wheel first? Are you tail wheel landing this airplane?
Yeah, I am. So I'm basically trying to get it down there as low as I can, and then definitely, just kind of to get that tail down first.
So you're getting the tail down, and then you're just holding back on the stick and just letting it bleed off, so they just slowly drop in the mains.
Kind of my best landings are, when I'm just kind of coming in almost just flat, and then I just go boom, boom. I mean, it's almost just like, that's when the good ones happen. But yeah, to your point, when my not so good ones are happening, that's what I'm doing. I'm thinking, okay, gosh, I should be down. It's really because I'm too high. I didn't fly it all the way down the runway. So I'm a couple of feet higher than I should be. And I'm like, man, I just got to get that tail down. And that's when it's kind of happening like you're describing. I'm getting it down, and then it hits and boom. But the mains always they always touch down probably within a second or two of my tail.
I have trouble with carrier landings, flat landings like that. I don't like flat landing the Q because I seem to have much better control if I've got a little bit of an altitude and I can come down and round out and use the round out, to soften the load with power if I need it, but not usually. And so people have everybody's landing them a little bit differently, but I found that works for me. The only problem is like some have said, you pull the nose up a little bit, it's kind of hard to see down the runway, but I don't, you can literally, it's all about speed management and everybody knows it, but you can literally come into the pattern after you've done this for several years. You can come into the pattern at 100 or 170, 180 miles an hour on base on a 4-mile final, and you could be down to, landing speed just by power management.
Yeah.
And that's what people have trouble with, and Sam and everybody else out here can attest to that, is that they're having trouble with their power management to get it down to the ground. So
yeah,
just a thought.
And I'm pretty good at nailing my air speeds. I've really focused in on getting the air speeds down in pretty much anything that I fly, and so I'm comfortable getting the speed that I want. I need to leave that stick alone a little bit longer, and get it down there.
Quick question for everyone: how many have a GU versus an LS1 cannon?
I have an LS1.
I know Sam has an LS1.
So what's that question again?
How many have a GU cannon versus the LS1 cannon?
I think Corbin's the only one with the GU on this call.
I think so. Yeah.
That's what I was saying about those VGs you have. They will make your canard fly longer than the LS1 will.
Yeah, in fact, I'd be really curious to see, again, once I kind of get these landings figured out, I bet you I can land this thing 10 to 12 miles per hour slower than what I'm doing now. I bet I could land it in the 60s.
Well, Jerry can land his.
Hey, here you guys go.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Hey, folks, we got about 2.5 minutes left. So I would like to know if anybody's got a burning question they've been wanting to get up here, and let me know what it is. If you're on mute right now, you can just go ahead and send it as a chat, but
Yeah, I use angle of attack and I touch down around 74 mile an hour.
Wow.
Okay.
Fly final at 85.
That's what I've been doing. I think 85 is the last time I look at my airspeed. I make sure I'm at 85, and then I just start looking outside and bleeding it off.
I wouldn't feel comfortable at that speed without angle of attack.
Say that one again.
I wouldn't feel comfortable flying at 85 on final if I didn't have an angle of attack indicator, because you're right on the edge. In fact, the touchdown requires power, because once you start pulling the power, it's at that speed, it'll just fall straight down on the tricycle. With the angle of attack, I know I'm good until I get ready to touch, and I always have to add a little power.
That's one thing, because my runway is so short. I've experimented a lot with descent rate. And I like what Jim was saying about a steeper descent, but we'll caution you with that it takes, there's a little delay when you round out before that plane stops dropping. Exactly. And I know that because there's a concrete barrier that I've run into that's horizontal.
Hey, Corbin, I want to thank you very much for doing this. It was really interesting, and
my pleasure.
Plane, and we're looking forward to hearing about your next flight with the new ignition system and everything.
It's great having you in the group.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and you guys have helped me out so much that, I mean,
how many participants do we have, Sam?
Pardon me? I think we got 19 right now.
18?
Yeah, 19.
Cool. Very good.
Okay, everybody. Give Corbin a wave, and then we'll see you next time.
Go get warm.
Yeah, I need to. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Nice seeing everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.